Hello and welcome to CT Politics TV. I'm veteran political strategist Dan Newmeyer. And if you've been following this show as it's been blowing up in the channel with all the great offerings that we have, from epidemiologists to general internists to complex patient specialists, all in one. We have a variety of different shows that we play. And I just wanted to introduce you to my core team, who you have seen on various shows and in interviews with Connecticut's top leaders from the state capitol and beyond. And first, I want to bring on my good friend Joe Aguirre of CMG Media. We'll kind of find out a little bit about Joe's sordid past and what CMG can do for you, right? Cool man guy, green room stuff. That's what CMG stands for, I think. But anyways, we'll bring him on. Joe Aguirre, how are you?
Hello, Dan Newmeyer.
Good to see you.
What's going on? Good to see you as well.
Joe's one of our better looking anchors, and he mans the CT Politics show like a pro. Joe, thank you for coming on here to talk to the peeps, and let's get a little bit about your background. And you've been in broadcasting a long time, and you actually teach it now, and you own the company CMG, which is Clovercrest Media Group.
Yes.
And why don't you tell everybody, what kinds of stuff Clovercrest does and a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, I'll start with my background. I have been in the media business, as you said, for a really long time. Started in 1997, couple of stints at KC 101. Probably best known for most people from my time at the River 105.9, where I dominated the ratings, Dan. And I'm not bragging, am I? A little bit. They might be. But and then I began doing podcasts right in 2016. We'll actually talk about that podcast a little bit later on. It's now known as Divided We Stand. But because of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton in that election, I thought I really got to start telling people my political views. I think it's important. I think everybody wants to know what I think. And that's where it all began. And in launching that podcast, we launched a sports podcast and a true crime. And we were just like three podcasts. We were just sort of working together, trying to market it, trying to push it out. People still didn't know a lot about podcasting. And by the time the pandemic hit, we were at 9 podcasts, kind of all working together. And during the pandemic, podcasting blew up, and now we're at 45.
Holy smokes. So that's a lot of back and forth talking to people and going, why am I purple on the screen? I can't figure it out. It's like, push the button.
Yeah, it was funny. We're actually using StreamYard, which is not the program I originally started using. I was using a much more difficult program that really only broadcasters understood how to use. And because we had so many different podcasts that included real people who weren't broadcasters necessarily, it was important that we find a program that just anybody could use. And that's what got us on StreamYard. And with that, clientele all over the country. We have shows in LA, Texas, Michigan, Massachusetts, Miami. So, where you could be and what you can do. And with everybody, again, as you just mentioned, you and I are obviously sitting in the same room.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And, or at least that's how it looks. And that's a big part of what we're trying to do is, green screen. We'll show you how to light it. We'll show you how to set it up. Basically, from inception to development, we'll help you get a show started. We do that a lot, and we really enjoy doing it.
Yeah, and there's a lot more to it than a lot of people understand to get, a good look out of it. I'm still, as you can see, a little bit orange, but no, I know that CMG produces a lot of really great shows, and that's what really first attracted me to getting you to join me on the channel, CT Politics channel, which is on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV for all you out there. And it streams live at ctpolitics.tv. And you can find the some of the podcasts Joe's talking about, as well as the shows that we do together, and Joe does with one of our other team members, Jimmy J, right here on the CT Politics channel. And so I met you because we had I had done my CBS radio show on WJJF for 3 years, and then after that was over, I filled in and did a couple weeks with Brad Davis at the end of session as a political pundit guy and calling the shots. And then I went down and I helped Paul Pacelli, our mutual friend, on WICC. And that's the producer, right? It's almost like the Van Halen story without the money, the rock stars. Right? We went to Mario's with our Ferraris, and that's when I met Sammy Hagar. But, for us, it was a little different. So the producer of Brad Davis's show, Eric Turbo Urbanowitz, number one producer, had moved to WICC to become Paul's main dude. And he reached out to you and said, "Hey, I got this guy, Dan Newmeyer." And you're like, "Who's that bum? I've never heard of him before."
That is such a funny story because I was doing a long-term fill-in at WICC, and Eric Urbanowitz, as you mentioned, was like, "Hey, my buddy," and he's got another buddy that he and I have a mutual friend, and they're all around 30 years old. And he said he had a buddy, and I just immediately thought, a 30-year-old, and he's talking about like this guy's a political something or other, and he's got his own show. And I thought, oh, that's cute. Love to talk to your pal. Little did I know you were a longtime veteran political strategist with his own channel. So that's
much worse than we found out. It was much worse.
But again, and you and I just hit it off because we have a mutual love of politics. I find you and what you know and your experiences to be fascinating. And I love talking to people that know stuff from a different angle than I've done a lot of sports talk, radio and stuff. And I love being there with professional athletes because I love sports. I stopped playing in high school, so I can ask the right questions and get good responses from those guys, and I just felt like talking to somebody like you, like, oh, I'll pick this guy's brain, and boy, people will love what we talk about. And you and I also have a and you and I also have a love of fighting. A professional fighting, and so just there's a lot, and you and I politically are very much on the same wavelength. Although, like everybody here, you seem to think I'm a Democrat.
Yeah, and then you professed that you were a Republican last night, and I'm like, well, how is the show going to work now? So, but look, I mean, I think what our show should be called, Trapped in the Middle.
Yeah, that's what it is. Well, it's funny. All right, so I'm going to be honest with you for a minute. I actually did change my political affiliation for a day.
One day.
Yeah. It was about 4 months before the primary, and the town clerk called me up and was like, "Hey, look, I'll put this through, but just so you know, you won't be able to vote in either primary." And I was like, "Oh, well, where's the fun in that?" He's like, "I can throw this out and you could just stay where you are and vote in the primary." And I did. And then I've just never made the change since.
Yeah, I don't know that. I think, there's parties and affiliation. And then there's really, the reality is that we're not all homogenous one way or another. We have nuances, and I think both of us are kind of in the center on a lot of issues. Now, people arrive at the center in various ways. And so I'm very kind of astute at picking up where people are with their own politics, how they've thought through things, at least in the issues that I pay attention to in terms of trying to determine where the middle of political thought is, because that's how I kind of gauge where the center voter rich group is that I want to try to reach. And so when we started talking, you had come to a lot of conclusions. You weren't just drinking the Kool-Aid, you were asking good questions, and you were calling out the bullshit. You can say, I can say bullshit on my own channel.
You can. It's your channel.
That's right. And that was important to me. And then I was involved in, all these different campaigns and everything. And you had this fascination with politics of kind of moving from the radio you'd been doing, which is like now sailing with Christopher Cross again. And, I felt the rain down in Africa and all that stuff. But you came over and you're like, I really like this political stuff. And I'm like, well, do I have a job for you, Mr. CMG? And it really, it's worked out really well. You brought a lot of guests that you developed on the radio who are some big major players in politics. And that was a big deal to me, was, getting someone who could run and gun with me and share the burden of listening to state politics till you can't even believe in it. Like, oh, this is boring. And you're not like a boring dude, you know what I mean? So, we like boxing and rock and roll and all the good stuff. So that was good. Then we both had this major health scare, right?
Oh, yeah. Our tickers started doing weird stuff right around the same time.
Yeah. Mine was more sympathetic. Like, I don't want to lose you. Oh, no, mine's going out. He's so much younger and dynamic than me. So anyways, that was a lot of fun. But now the show's really taking off, and we've had these huge guests, and Vincent Candeloro, the minority leader's coming on Thursday. And my friend Alex Plitzis, who's a veteran Army Special Forces, and he runs a nonprofit where the interpreters, and when we pulled out of Afghanistan, we left like 120,000 allies who helped us at the mercy of the Taliban. So for the last year, he's been getting just, dozens and hundreds of families out of Afghanistan, and a lot of them are coming to America and becoming citizens. But, they helped in the United States. So that should be a riveting interview. I think the other thing that strikes me about the show and what we're trying to accomplish here is that we're trying to listen to all the voices, even the nutty ones, because what happens is we're all stuck in these bubbles of confirmation bias where, we're just listening to people who agree with us. And, so I started to venture out into social media conversations again, which is always, risky in terms of, people going after you. And there's a lot of really bad discourse out there where people are name calling, and they're just shutting down conversation and being insulting to people because they think that somehow that's going to attract you to their side. What do you think about that?
I find it curious when I'm doing my thing and I'm speaking factually to people, and people accuse me of lying or making up facts. Like, where would I have even made this up? I do think that, the discourse in this country is at a point now where we struggle to hear and talk to each other. You talk about, people who have kind of nuttier viewpoints. I thought that was a shout out to Dominic Rapini and some of his colleagues. Dan, when I talk to people, I try to be fair. I try to ask everybody the same questions. And if you want to go down a road that makes you sound like a crazy person, that's on you, but it's certainly never my intention. And I'm always trying to find out, why somebody thinks the things that they think, or why they've come to the viewpoint or perspective that they've come from. And that's all I'm trying to figure out is, why do you think the things that you think? Just so we can all kind of understand it. And I think that's the best way to go about the current discourse in this country, where obviously people have a variety of opinions and thoughts, and a lot of it based on their own research.
Mm-hmm. And that, that brings us to a next point. There's a lot of stuff local journalists are bringing up, and about sourcing your material, right? There's a lot of disinformation out there on both sides that partake in it. And in the old days in the military, it was called psychological warfare, right? So there's bad actors outside the country and inside the country who want power, want to gain power, want to diminish power of the United States, want to get us fighting amongst ourselves. And we have to somehow find ways to verify the information we're getting. And with the pandemic, I know even I fell victim to that a lot until I met one of our other team members, Dr. Amy Chai, who kind of said, "Wake up! This this is basic biology, and no, the mRNA is not going to change your DNA, but very well a virus might, right?" So there's a lot of stuff that we have to check our sources, and we have to kind of figure out what's the other side of the argument, right? I always told my kids, look, if you can argue the other side of an argument, then you can argue your side of the argument better, right? So anyways, thank you very much for helping me in this effort. And I'm looking forward to bringing a lot of Joe's shows onto the channel, the crime drama. And we just cut a Divided We Stand with Jimmy J and Joe Aguirre last night, which is actually airing tonight after your interview with the majority leader, Jason Rojas, which was a really nice interview. And people are making the time and coming on the show because, they know that they're going to get a fair shake from you and I. And, everybody can put their ideas out there. There's no gotcha on our show. It's more, you come on, tell us your stuff, and we're giving you our perspective on things. And some people are going to like what you say, and some people are going to like what I say. But anyways, let's move to our next guest. Let's bring on Dr. Amy Chai. Hi, Dr. Chai.
Hi, how are you guys today?
Hey, we're doing all right. Dr. Amy Chai has run for Congress. That's where I met her and helped her with some campaign stuff. And we've become very good friends. And Dr. Amy does she's very prolific in writing articles and has written books and is an epidemiologist, a general internist, and a complex patient addiction specialist. But now you have a new show that you're producing. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll slide into what you're doing now.
Okay, sure. I am right now mostly treating patients with addictions. And that's actually one of the reasons I got into the whole idea of politics, because what I saw in our state, Connecticut, is, and I'm sure it goes on in other states too, is that there's a real place for prevention that isn't happening, where kids with traumas, kids with unstable home backgrounds, minority kids, poor kids, are not getting the education they need. They're not getting the mental health care they need. And these simple things could prevent them from going off the rails and ending up addicted to drugs in prison, or ending up in my clinic. And by the time I see them, they've had so much trauma. They've had so much bad going on in their lives that prevention is just so much better than cure.
Now, after or let's talk about your run for Congress.
Mhm.
You had mentioned, I remember in your opening remarks when you launched the campaign, that patients were coming to you and telling you they felt suicidal because they were watching the news.
Yeah.
Why don't you expand on that?
Yeah, and I just wrote a Substack about this topic just recently. Um, People would come into my office and be crying, be suicidal. And, I always try to get to the bottom of it, like how much of it is just pure depression and how much of it is what we call situational depression, or depression that can be changed by certain, you know, trying to avoid exposure to certain things, or social work or something like that. So what I was getting was a lot of this suicidality and depression was actually being described as coming from watching the news, because our nation is so divided. And these are people, a lot of them are very, you know, society changes rapidly. And the vulnerable people are the people who are elderly, people who are poor, people who are limited incomes, and they don't have the resources to adapt to change. And a lot of the people sort of on the fringes of society are very, very, very susceptible to something like this really messing with their mental health. So I literally had to prescribe, like, stop watching the news. And I thought, what's wrong with us? What's wrong? Why can't we get along? And the more I looked at it, the more it seemed as though our political system, the media, not you,
Well, no, I
but
know you.
the
I'm just thinking
mainstream
like,
media. Can I
Joe,
say
is this
mainstream
really
media?
helping us? Selling the show, but no, that's really why we have the show, is to sort things out for people and talk to actual political leaders who at the Capitol are not are not involved in all this vitriol and hatred. They're just trying
Right.
to work out stuff for themselves. But that was kind of the impetus for what you did after your run, which was to put together Speak Life New Haven. And why don't you talk a little bit about what that is and what that means, and then what you hope to accomplish with that?
Okay. Well, I made a promise to the people of New Haven that I was going to do what I could do to help close down the school to prison pipeline, even if I didn't get elected. And this is me following through on my promise to the people of New Haven. It's a huge problem. It's not a problem that can be solved by any one person. But I do know that there are a lot of factors that could be improved simply by getting people together, giving people a voice, and giving people access to the information that they need. So on Speak Life New Haven, I'm going to be talking a lot about medical issues, and I consider mental health to be a medical issue, because you can't have physical health until your mental health is good, because you can't follow the recommendations. You can't follow a diet. You can't take medications properly. You can't even get out of bed sometimes unless your mental health is okay. And the same goes for addiction. So I have reached out to other people in the community. And one of those groups is Fathers in Education. And this group is going to be working with men who are released from prison, helping to teach them how to get involved in their children's lives and in their children's education. And so I'm really hoping to get a segment of men reading books, men reading books to their children, sort of modeling how to be that dad that nobody ever was for them. And just that act of care and concern about their children, and, a simple children's book is going to be something that's going to help unite fathers to their children. And that's really an important issue for the kids' educational success. And another issue that I would really like to have segments on is recovery. And a lot of people in addiction recovery, once they're out of the doctor's office, they need support. And you'd be surprised how many people actually have literally no support in their lives, like no sober friends, no car to get to a meeting, So getting access to the kind of community that they need should be free and available and local. And I'd like to try to make that happen. And I'm going to be having a meeting about that at the end of the month, see what we can get out there. So people can, what I'd like to do with that is to have topics to talk about, like, what are your triggers, for example? And if your triggers are like money, trouble handling money, because sometimes as soon as you get cash in hand, the intense desire to spend it on drugs is very, very hard to overcome. And that's because of a brain problem that doesn't go away once you're in recovery. So, yes, go ahead.
So you've produced a couple of shows on varying topics too, like nutrition, weight loss.
Yes.
You've done your first show on that, and you have a second follow-up on that. And so along with your new show, Speak Like New Haven, you're going to also be contributing little news 5-minute clips of health tips to our CT Politics TV news that will be interspersed on the channel, so you can get a little update of living your life a little better, being a little healthier. Yeah. Those are all really good things, and I know it's going to be successful because so many people are watching your videos now. Let's bring on our fourth team member here, and he's a former United States Marine. And he works as doing production on a radio station. Currently, he has aspirations of being an actor and is actually in a movie. And he is the other half of Divided We Stand with Joe Aguirre. And they can fight over who is the better half. And let's bring him on now, Jimmy J. Jimmy, how are you?
I'm doing well, guys. Thank you very much, Dan. And I'll tell you this much. Joe has the better facial hair. I'll give him that. He can grow that bad boy. I'm Asian, so I don't get a lot of facial hair. So Joe wins in that category. But that's about it. So, yeah. But thank you very much for the introduction, Dan. I am truly blessed to be here with you guys. I have an epidemiologist, right? I have a veteran of radio and entertainment up in there with a beard, and I have a political strategist that I am trying to keep pace with here in this political arena. I mean, for God's sakes, an epidemiologist who ran for the United States.
Yeah. You put us all together like this, it's like, whoa.
I'm the low man on the totem pole here, and I fully admit that. Are you
sure you're supposed to mix all this stuff together? I don't think so.
By the way, it should be noted that I had Dr. Amy Chai on my radio program so many times before the election. I was accused of being on her payroll. And I'll tell you right now, Dr. Amy, most of what you and I talked about makes up a good portion of the interviews that I do with all of our politicians here in the state, because the information that you brought to the table to me on education, particularly in New Haven, but we went and looked at all the cities where we're failing the kids in a major way. And I constantly bring up all of the things that you and I talked about, feet to the fire with all of these politicians, that we make sure that we take care of these kids in the city.
Good.
Look, the check's in the mail. We told you that already.
He's brilliant.
Mail slow, that's all. No, there was no payment other than appreciation. Yeah, so no, that was cool how that all worked. So how did you end up meeting Jimmy, Joe? Let's, you can make it up if you want to.
Yeah.
Please do. We want to hear what you can make up.
I know, seriously, it's like some sort
Say
of
something good,
some sort of action movie, and we were enemies.
Accident.
Right towards the end, we ended up facing off. No, it's a great story. I met this guy. He was actually a student of mine, a broadcasting student of mine, but he was also an actor, and I thought, oh, I like that because, and here's what I think most people don't understand about this and what this is. There's a certain element of, we're also entertaining you. And right, I mean,
we're trying.
It's good if you're giving out the information, but you also have to do it in a way that is entertaining. And part of what Jimmy and I do on Divided We Stand, and we were able to do right there in class from the get-go, was we would get into it something fierce, going back and forth. And when it was over, never some hurt feelings. And I thought, that's the kind of guy I'd like to do a show with. Someone who doesn't agree with me, who doesn't take things personally, who I can still talk to after we're done talking about these things. And we spent some time together outside of school, kind of getting to know each other a little bit. And I was fascinated by him. I used to think a lot of the things he did some years ago. And, I got over myself. And he's just not there yet.
Hard to take it personal when he doesn't listen to you.
Very similar. I feel very similarly about Joe, and when we met and all the conversations that we've had, and I'm like, God, I gotta argue with this guy more because he is wrong like 95% of the time, and it's just like shooting fish in a barrel, and I love it. Now, there's one person that I don't want to argue with here, and that's Dr. Amy Chai, because I swear to God, I'm not going to lie, man. I'm a little intimidated by her. I'm not,
you should be.
Right? I know I should be. But you know what? I do. I have listened to her on the radio. I've listened to her when we've gone out to lunch. And my God, she is actually pushing me a little bit.
Young looking? Did you say I'm young?
Well, you are young looking.
And skinny too.
Yeah.
Jimmy, even her name is more Asian than you are.
I know. How is this possible?
What's going on?
Yeah.
That's why you were attracted to her, I think.
She's enlightened me. She's enlightened me to a new side of politics, not just right and wrong, but there is, middle ground somewhere. And I truly appreciate it. Truly, I mean, I am in the presence of greatness, all three of you guys, and I'm for the first time in my life. And you can ask my wife. I am truly humbled.
Oh, well, don't be.
Don't be humbled.
Yeah, I think he's gonna need some therapy.
Yeah,
I do. I need a lot of therapy. I know that, but
no. Look, we're kind of an island of misfit toys in a way, but this, I think, we're a good representation of, pretty average folks that you'd meet out in the street who, just trying to figure out what's going on and trying to bring people back together. I think that was like what really getting everyone together towards this show is about, is, the discourse in politics had gotten to a point where families are breaking up. People aren't showing up for Thanksgiving dinner, or not talking to each other, estrangement, or breaking off into camps where, Joe's weird Uncle Joe, can't go over to his house anymore, or you'll catch conservatism. or whatever.
You know, Dan, and divided we stand with Joe and I. We absolutely try to end each show by telling people, look, you heard us arguing. We even fought a little bit because sometimes we get a little rowdy, right? We get a little passionate, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
But we always try to end the show saying, you know, yeah, we got heated. Yeah, we started yelling at each other. But you know what? We're gonna end the show, go have a beer together because we're friends at the end of the day. It's not Joe's policies that I'm fighting against. It's not my policies that he's fighting against.
Actually, it is Joe Biden's policies
Well,
you are fighting against.
Different Joe.
I would have said
Different
Brandon.
Joe.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you guys were the
that's what
same.
we try to show with Divided We Stand, that we can argue the policies of our elected officials, and at the end of the day, we can remain friends, right?
I got to tell you a funny story about that. Our third show, I, as I said, I'd argued with this guy. We got along, no hard feelings. And our third show together, it got particularly heated to the point where we started screaming at each other loud, back and forth. And I'm not normally like this, but he asked me to basically take something back that I said that was offensive. And I doubled down. And it got worse.
Media way.
Yeah. And I literally just ended the show. I just hit the button, went to the outro. He was gone. I just hung up when it was over. And yeah, right? Like, there we go. I'll never talk to Jimmy again. And I sat there for about 15 minutes and I thought, that was wrong. That was wrong of me. I shouldn't have doubled down. I should have apologized and taken that statement back. It was a little bit rude. And I sent him a text and he was like, wow, what a great show. And I was like, oh, I'm like, you're cool? He's like, yeah, give me a call. And I called him, and yeah, he didn't care at all. He thought it was amazing the way the show ended, and to go back and watch it, it was.
It was a great show, man.
He just he doesn't get upset no matter what happens. And again, like he just said, we didn't pass these laws. We're not the ones that are introducing these policies to America. We're just a couple of buddies who are really into this stuff, who have different positions on it, and we like to talk about it. And I think one of the things that Jimmy and I really are very careful of is that we try to talk in factual information, not how you're feeling about something, but what are the actual facts about things. And last night, for instance, we recorded an episode, and one of the things we talked about is selective outrage. It's something that we try not to have. We're upset no matter who's got classified documents because that's bad. It's bad if it's a Democrat, a Republican, or anywhere in between. That stuff shouldn't be happening. And I said to Jimmy last night, if you weren't upset 6 months ago at Mar-a-Lago, shut your mouth now. You have no right to be upset about classified documents being unsecure. I was upset when Trump did it, and I'm upset when Biden did it. And I think that's the way we should all be. And we should hold even your side, hold them to a high standard. The highest standard you would hold your opponent to, do it for your guy too.
Yeah, and I think that's what your show does really well, is you guys step outside of both parties and you look at what you're seeing and you try and describe it. And I know Dr. Chai, if I look down like this, it's like the Brady Bunch, right? Dr. Chai down there. Yeah, that's right. You and I sometimes will comment on a social media post on Twitter, and all of a sudden the trolls come after us and we're fighting for our lives. And really, we're bickering back and forth about something, and I haven't read the book on it, and you wrote the book on it, and then I end up like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going home, and then all the trolls follow me, right, and keep popping up. But isn't it crazy how people are so involved in their little bubble that you can't get them to have
it's just crazy. And people seem to be like, say for example, I comment on people who, a side that I would normally agree with. And yet I say something critical because I always say something critical if it deserves being said critically. And then all of the sudden, all of the sudden, I'm now a communist. And it's like, okay, not, but that's if you step out of the tiny, tiny little box that each side has corner, it's like they've painted themselves into a corner and they can't think outside their little space, and they get so easily triggered if something is said that doesn't fit whatever narrative, and that would be either the left narrative or the right narrative. And because I'm neither left nor right, but I'm actually a pragmatist, um you know
Science-based.
I just, it's like, we're not going to agree. That's okay. We figure out the best way to solve something, and that's what we need to do.
I think
Um,
what's
that's
really
all.
interesting about your thoughts and your discourse is that, you know, you describe yourself as more libertarian in many ways, and conservative in some ways. But when you were talking regarding COVID-19, the virus, and being an epidemiologist, you were doing so from your knowledge as being that type of doctor, and also looking at statistics. You volunteered for the Moderna study, and you really had a wealth of information, and were appropriately preparing people at your work with masks and stuff. And so when you introduced that aspect of who you are into social media, into a libertarian group or into conservatives, many who are just way out there on vaccines and,
Yeah.
and everything, you had a lot of pushback, a lot of people getting angry about this. And one of the things, it's not just that we're being rude and mean to people, but there's kind of life and death information here,
Yeah.
that professionals, that doctors, that people who know about this stuff are putting out there, and it's being discounted,
Right.
like FBI investigations, like the IRS, like there's a concerted effort to tear down the establishment and everything it stands for, and it's to our own detriment that we're not relying on these institutions of our culture
Yeah.
uh, to
And
get good information.
I mean, that's true. But in the beginning, I was actually fighting the CDC because I knew they were lying about COVID not being worse than the flu. And don't worry about it. And I was frantic because I knew they were lying. And when they start out lying like that, that's why people don't trust them anymore. And I
Mhm.
can't really blame people for not trusting them anymore, or for when people don't. I mean, there's a big psychological issue going on, and that's when, instead of taking people's concerns seriously and being transparent, walking them through the process, the pros and cons, disrespecting people's intelligence enough to just lie to their face and then accuse them when they're upset, that's not really the right way to handle that either. So I think we, as the medical community, didn't do a good job, and we didn't communicate well. That wasn't my fault.
I'm on the I'm in a broadcast right now, so go and be quiet as soon as possible. Thank you.
I think I hear a doggy.
Yeah. Anyways, we got everybody in there. Ugh.
So we need to rebuild our trust in
There you go.
institutions. But the way to rebuild trust in institutions is by refraining from demonizing people's legitimate questions and concerns, and being honest and being transparent. And I feel almost as though certainly with and I'm going to have to say mainstream media again. I don't want to say that again, but I am. There's almost a glee to try to gin up fear or outrage or like misrepresent people. So they'll get upset, and then somehow that generates more clicks, more views, more ratings, and because conflict sells, frankly.
That's
If
know,
it leads, it leads.
That's
right?
right. Joe and I have said it a million times that, the 24-hour news cycle is a very, very bad thing, in our opinion.
it is. I agree.
And it's more of a ratings grab than it is actual factual news.
Yeah. And
I
that's
see
what
it.
that's why we're here, is to be boring, right?
Speak for yourself, Dr. Chai. One of the things that's bothering me about the social media aspect is that, especially on the Republican side now, is we had this very contentious election, and the Republican Party is factional now between
Mhm.
the Trumpers, the conservative, and the moderates, and the Trumper group is really cleaving off anybody who doesn't agree with them at all
Yeah.
as being, communists and sympathizers to the Democrats and all this
Yeah,
crazy
that's very
nutty stuff.
counterproductive.
It is. And then the other thing that they're doing is, like, there's a one fella out there who claims to be a journalist and everything. And every day he posts some crime that's happened somewhere, some brutal crime or robbery or whatever. And he posted as, another day in the Democrats' crime-free Connecticut, as if that he's not putting any statistics out there or anything like that. He's just saying that crime is increasing. It's everywhere you look. There's carjacks, there's this, there's that, there's the other thing, and it's all in the Democrats' corrupt Connecticut, when the FBI statistics and everything that we see factually in that realm is pointing the other direction. Now, I know people feel differently about that, but as soon as you start saying, well, the reason for that is this, and it's because we can't trust the FBI, and there's a global conspiracy that's changing us all over to one world government, and the reason you can't trust the media is because I said so. And
Well,
They're all in on it, clearly.
You picked a great topic, Dan, because that's going to be one of the topics that I discuss on my new show that will be coming out soon, called Right and Wrong with Jimmy J. Is actually the crime statistics, because I actually pulled the crime statistics from the FBI. I have factual data.
Oh, yeah.
And you're not necessarily incorrect, right? Overall, arching crime statistics has gone down, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. Until
and of
That's
course,
a
there's other
teaser.
things, things that flare up, obviously. But the main thing is that what you're doing is you're saying, look, here are the statistics, and this is showing this, which is going up, or that there is a trend over here, right? What this other person's doing is he's taking a picture of some, guy the police shot on the ground and saying this murderous thug or whatever, or, what I mean?
You're 100% right, Dan. Like, I
And
watch news, right? I watch the news all the time, and I never hear one of the reporters come out and say, well, the FBI crime statistics say this, right? I never hear them say that. You're 100% right. And that's why I am actually going to show you the FBI crime statistics. And we'll discuss them, and we'll talk about them.
Yeah. So tomorrow, Tuesday, the 24th, the four of us, the team, is going to be up at the LOB, Legislative Office Building at the Capitol, around 1 o'clock or so, 1 to 2:30. And hopefully, if folks want to come up and meet us and take some pictures, and you might even get on television, we can do some interviews. We're all looking to kind of engage with viewership out there and get people to be part of the team. So now, have you guys figured out how many times you're going to do one Divided We Stand per week? I heard that you might have some guests to accompany both of you on future shows where you each bring someone else on. Maybe
I'm gonna
from
bring
social
some
media.
backup. Yeah, I gotta bring
Yeah.
some backup.
Bring some backup and really pound on old man Aguirre.
Yeah, no.
Right.
I don't really need help, but I'm not going to turn it down.
Oh,
That's right. And then Amy, the same thing for you is that you're looking for different groups that are working in the community
Yeah.
to help folks out who want a platform and want to come on to your show and discuss different types of issues. So
Yeah. If you have something that's concerning and nobody's listening to you, let me be your voice.
That's excellent. Well, I think we can kind of wrap this up. And I want to thank you all for being part of the fabric here on CT Politics TV channel and the show. And for all of you out there, come up and see us at the Capitol. We're going to be doing a lot of fun things. We have some great leaders coming on to talk to, great shows to add. And if you're doing a podcast or want to start one, you can reach out to Joe Aguirre's CMG Media or any one of us. We can direct you to him. And, maybe if you're putting out a good product there, then we can add you to the channel and you'll be part of the mix, because we want to bring Connecticut-based shows that are in politics and other subjects too, whether it's health, whether it's sports, right? We'd love to have a great sports person on to talk about local sports. And also, we like to feature journalists and social issue groups and business leaders who are doing stuff in the community as well. Nonprofits and charities are always welcome to reach out too, because we want to give some space to them. But thank you all very much. Now I'm going to get rid of y'all, and I'll catch you all tomorrow at the Capitol. Sound good?
See you later, Dan.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hi, Amy. And there you have it, right? That is CT Politics TV for today. You got to meet the team and hear a little bit about the shows that we're producing and what we hope to accomplish here, and bringing us all back to the table so we can have the discussions that we need to move people forward and not keep pushing people apart. And part of that is being very vigilant about the information that we're reading on different subject matter, on issues, and trying to cross-reference that with reliable sources, which are hard to determine. Media literacy, understanding how to engage and get the information you really need to know for your family and friends, so we can all get along here, is a big deal. I am Dan Newmeyer, veteran political strategist, and you are watching CT Politics TV. Bye now.